So you will actually be memorizing a lot of these chemical symbols so that you could look at an image like this and know exactly which element each one of these symbols are referring to. For example, C is carbon, N is nitrogen, and O is oxygen. So models of molecules often look like this. Molecules are two or more atoms that are chemically combined. Some molecules are made up of only one type of atom, like this nitrogen. So there's two nitrogens that are combined together to make nitrogen gas, or N2. And some molecules are made up of more than one type of atom, like H2O, which we now know is water. So when we are talking about energy and its relation to chemistry, we started out with energy because it's so important. It explains how all of these atoms can combine to form molecules, or molecules can react with different types of molecules in a chemical reaction. And so hopefully these are a review for you, right? Kinetic energy has to do with movement. And so you see her kicking the ball here. Potential energy has to do with the potential for something to release energy. So right here, she's not moving the ball, but it has the potential to fall to the ground. So it has more potential energy up here than it does while it's sitting on the ground, because on the ground it doesn't have the potential to fall anywhere. Thermal energy has to do with heat and the flow of heat, like we've already talked about, and chemical energy is potential energy stored in chemical bonds. So instead of a soccer ball, now we have, you can kind of imagine these as being closer or farther apart from each other, these atoms here that make a molecule, and there's potential energy stored in those bonds. And we'll talk more about that later. Thermal energy, as you guys have already learned, is all about the motion of molecules and atoms. And so as something heats up, the molecules actually vibrate a lot more, or a lot faster. And so thermal energy is another type of kinetic energy. And finally, interaction of matter and energy. So you can see here, this is a type of metal that melts it just by holding it in your hand. And so here is it's solid on this part, and you can see if it's solid, it's organized really nicely into this crystal structure. But here where it's melting, notice those particles, oh, they're moving a little bit faster. You can tell by kind of this whoosh shadow here on the particles, and they're kind of a lot more disorganized. So that's going to be the difference that you can tell between solids and liquids in general. And then finally, bringing it back to combustion or fire. Here we go. I wanted to show this picture here, and so I just typed in particle view of combustion, right? And I get all these different pictures. This you can start to see is a chemical reaction or a chemical equation. It looks like an equation because we have a plus sign, just like in a math equation. So a couple of plus signs, but we have this arrow here, and you don't usually see that in a math equation. So in chemical equations, which you will learn more about, you'll notice this is the format. On one side, we have the reactants. So these are the things that are reacting. So in this situation, this would be the wood. Okay, so, or the fuel that we're burning in the fire. And wood is made up of carbon and hydrogen. And then here we have oxygen. So we know that oxygen is floating around in the atmosphere, and it's going to react with the fuel. And then those atoms are going to rearrange. So notice over here, they look totally different. It's the same number of actual atoms if you count them up. But now we have carbon dioxide, which we all know we breathe out of our mouth, and water, which we also breathe out of our mouth. And our bodies are made of mostly water. But in a fire, you have, when you're burning wood with oxygen, it also releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and water, believe it or not, and a whole bunch of energy. So combustion actually occurs in lots of different places. It occurs in your body when you eat food. Food is a fuel. It occurs in a fire. It occurs in a combustion engine in a car when we put gas